Good evening, everybody. Welcome to System Thinking online class. This is class number 17. This class is organized by KAIL, Perkumpulan Kuncup Padang Ilalang. We are NGO based in Bandung. Usually we run training, workshop, and also meetings among activists, so we can discuss various issues, and then we create strategies, and then connecting organizations so they can work together towards change to be a more sustainable world. Since last year, since the pandemic, we organize everything online, including this System Thinking online class. So this System Thinking online class has started in March last year, in the middle of in the starting of pandemic COVID-19 in Indonesia. It started with Linda Butswini sharing about how to use system thinking in education, and some of the participants get inspired and apply that in their own setting, like in pesantren is a boarding school, a Muslim boarding school, and they incorporate the system thinking perspective on its curriculum. So it's very interesting initiative, and we still discuss about that. And we also discuss many other themes, such as deep agroecology, where Stephen also became the speaker in August last year. Yeah, and then we have also many other speakers, including Hot Mokleon, who share his experience working in Mexico last year as well. And this year, we also continue that event, and we will bring experience from many different parts of the world, so we can get some inspiration from them to continue our work in Indonesia. This year, we are focusing our effort in doing some practical things in Bandung. The initiative called Community Supported Agriculture. That initiative come from last year problem with COVID-19, where there is a disruption in food distribution system. So the farmers cannot market their product, and the consumer hardly get the food. So there is some problem in that, and we get a small grant from Balaton Group to initiate that, to support the farmers, as well as like creating a new platform for safe and sustainable food, which ensure the living for farmers, as well as ensuring healthy food for consumers. So from that initiative, it still continue. We still try to find like sustainable model in both sides, in the production side, as well as in the delivery, as well as in the consumption part. And we would like to formalize that in more systematic way and organize that as a community supported agriculture initiative. And that's why we invite Stephen again, because he has had written 2 books on CSA in the early 19s, long time ago. So we have pioneer here, where we can dig deep a lot of experience and inspiration, so we can start our initiative not from zero, but we can learn from what has happening, and we can create within our own context. And so most of the participants come from YPBB and KAIL, my organization, and our partner organization. who will run that CSA in our city in Bandung. But we also would like to have that initiative spread across Indonesia. So although we are still in the very early stage in our experience, we think that this initiative is an excellent program to support both farmers and consumers and improving the relation to be more equal and just for both sides as well as for the nature. And that's why we make this event tonight open for everyone who would like to join. So on the participant list, there are also NGO activists, some people from academia, from government, and also from donor agencies in Indonesia. And they come from many different parts of Indonesia. I hope that they can also learn from something from our discussion tonight. Yeah, that's the introduction. And now I would like to introduce the speaker, Stephen Mcfadden. He lives in Nebraska, United States. Independent journalist, has written a lot of books, including Farms of Tomorrow, Community Supported Farm and Farm Supported Communities in early 90s. And also Farm of Tomorrow Revisited in 1998. And then The Call of Land, an agrarian primer for 21st century and awakening community intelligence, CSA farms as 21st century cornerstones. He also wrote Deep Agroecology, Farms, Food, and Our Future in 2019, where we discussed this book last year in August, and also author of contemporary epic, nonfiction saga of North America. Stephen is a member of Balaton Group, and during the 90s, he was a director of the Wisdom Conservancy, a national coordinator for annual Earth Day celebration in 1993, and in partnership with the Seventh Generation Fund, he helped develop the curriculum and launched the nationwide Council Circles program for community gatherings. And special because today is Earth Day, so it's a good day to start our good intention in Bandung as well as in different parts of Indonesia and in the world. So with that spirit, we unite our intention. So we hope that despite all the challenges that we will face in terms of like pandemic, maybe climate change and all the changing situation that we will face, there is always seeds for good transformation that we as a community involved in nurturing that to grow. So that's my opening. To make things short, then I will invite Stephen. Please, Stephen.
Well, good evening.
Thank you very much,
everyone. It's an honor to be invited and have the opportunity to engage with you tonight. I'm going to click my share screen and bring up PowerPoint presentation. Let's see, and I need to change the view here to slideshow. There, can everyone see that? That's the title slide. And as you'll see, I've denoted CSA farms and exploration and activation. So I wanted to explore the global context of CSA, and then towards the end of the presentation to talk a little bit about how does one bring a CSA into being so that it exists and is serving the community that it's a part of. You might note also that I've kind of reversed the words in the subtitle, not only community-supported agriculture, but also agriculture-supported communities, because is a relationship that requires a mutuality of sharing. So here, let's see. Oh, I can't even read my own slide. Whoop, I've got to back up. Well, I wanted to offer greetings to you and with this slide also make an apology because I'm not fluent in the culture of Indonesia, so I may inadvertently say some things that are blunt or crude. I hope that's not the case, but please forgive me. And here's this beautiful flower is the jasmine sambak, which I have learned is one of the cherished national flowers of Indonesia. And so I wanted to begin by admiring that and then move on to this image, which is the white-bellied sea eagle, such a beautiful bird with its wings spread. I've selected a quote from the Atani Leon Secretero, who was a Navajo elder, someone who I became very close with over the years. That's a Navajo word, Na'atani, and basically it means the head man or the respected elder in the village who has earned the respect of all the people, not just through what he says, but through what he does. And he gave the long view. The journey we are beginning now is for the next 500 years. Well, you could say the next 1,000 years. Even in the midst of all the changes that are taking place and the things that seem to be falling apart, we're building the foundation for that journey now. And that's something important for us to remember. I selected that quote because I've often used the metaphor of the CSA farm serving as cornerstones for our lives in this 21st century. They're independent and intelligent community cells of people who can respond to the very often extreme circumstances that we face and provide so many benefits to the community in the way of healthy food and ecological balance. So I'm wondering how I can get this. Yeah, oh, well, back up again a bit. Here, this slide, it just outlines one of the paradigms at work in our world, and perhaps the most powerful. Annie, are you trying? I heard some static. At any rate, let me go on. It's commercial technocracy, which is the industrial, chemical, data-driven, multinational corporate agriculture, which is at work around the world so diligently, scooping up and patenting plants and seeds and claiming land all over. And certainly here in the United States, it has driven farmland prices sky high. The largest landholder in our nation is now Bill Gates of the Microsoft Corporation, owns, excuse me, hundreds of thousands of acres. And meanwhile, many of the young people who are coming along and feel the vocational call to be farmers cannot afford to get into agriculture. And instead, they must become an employee and work for someone else like Bill Gates, who owns all these lands. So this is what's going on. Of course, the driving impulse of capitalism is to produce more product and profit for less labor and cost. So of course, they're always squeezing, and efficiency almost becomes a penalty process on the workers. And it winds up that, I know it's probably not the intention, but with the commercial technocracy and industrial agriculture, we do have exploitation of human beings. I think here of not only the farm workers who come into the United States from Mexico and Central America, but they are paid very low wages. They have very substandard living conditions and not much respect. So it winds up that, at least in the United States, they're exploited. And this is true also in our slaughterhouses and confined animal feeding operations, the CAFOs. So human beings, animals, plants, and planet, as a consequence of this paradigm, this framework for thinking, wind up exploited. So move from there onto some of the thoughts that Gwendolyn Hall-Smith shared with us all. Was it just a month ago or maybe 6 weeks ago when she shared with this group? And I wanted to kind of cultivate some of the seed thoughts that she shared because the commercial technocracy is not the only paradigm. It's just the one that seems the strongest and the most dominating right now. But Gwendolyn talked about sociocratic governance, community regenerative economics, community land trusts, not only community farms, but also community fisheries. And then she talked about money as a public utility rather than a private monopoly. And my eyes were opened very wide as I listened to her and looked at the slides that she was presenting, because it unified some of the thoughts that I'd had in my own reading and study. And so if these concepts speak to you, you might want to go back and review the recording of that session to understand them more fully. I think the community land trusts item that is mentioned on this slide is especially important in my nation. I don't know the situation in Indonesia, so I can't comment on it. But here, as I mentioned earlier, a lot of the land is being bought up by billionaires and also investment trusts and foreigners, often from the Arabian nations in the Middle East, where oil has provided a great deal of wealth. Well, they have purchased land. And this creates the problem of young people who want to follow the vocational career of growing food for the people. They can't get in, they can't begin. So in a community land trust, which is a concept worth studying on its own, land is purchased for the last time at whatever value the market is asking, but then it is held in a legal trust so that it remains available to always be land appropriate for agriculture, and that can be leased to young farmers who want to get involved at a reasonable rate so that they can make a living for themselves and produce food for the community. Well, here's the context. I'm not going to dwell on these slides because we all know them too well. The environmental crisis, and then climate chaos, which it seems almost every day we have news of new and concerning developments with that and how very real it is and how it's impacting our lives. And then, of course, this third factor of the pandemic, which has us all so bottled up. Thank heavens that there is a technology like Zoom and other internet capacities so that we can at least communicate with each other a little bit. So in all of this context, I have here an empty bowl as an image, and I selected a quote from Michael Fakhri, who's the United Nations Special Rapporteur on the right to food. This is a statement he made just this year in January 2021. The global food crisis is chronic, urgent, and set to intensify. Well, that certainly woke me up when I read that. And I realized that it comes in the context of a tremendous global event that is ramping up and that will actually happen in September and October. That's the United Nations Global Food Systems Summit. And you can see I've placed a couple of the principal hashtags for that if you go searching around on the internet. I wanted everyone to be aware that this is happening because every nation on the planet is sending representatives to this. And at the same time, there's, is schism the right word, or certainly a conflict or a disagreement about the way this summit is being organized and being conducted. In short, civil society organizations around the globe, like La Via Campesina, which is an organization of workers who actually work on the land, and peasant organizations, they have all decided to boycott this meeting because it appears to them, and they have studied it more closely than I'm able to, but the inner workings of it, excuse me, it's early morning here and I'm still waking up fully. But at any rate, what they're saying is that corporations have dominated the planning of this summit and the way that it's defined. And as we're probably all well aware, there are social movements all around the planet for greater equality and justice. And the farm workers of the world recognize this, that they have had a low status and poor conditions, and they don't want to play the corporate domination game anymore. And so they're boycotting the summit. I imagine we'll hear a lot more about this as the year goes on, but I wanted you to be aware that there's this conflict and that the impulse around the globe of human beings to seek greater freedom, respect, and justice, that's likely to intensify as well. So what can any one of us do about the global food crisis? Well, CSA is one possible answer. This is a statement from the United States Department of Agriculture, and it is 5 years old. It goes back to 2016, but it still speaks directly to the conditions that we're facing in 2021. Climate change will continue to impact global and local food security. It will disrupt food prices and food availability. Annie made reference to that in the beginning. And this third statement for me is the most important one. Effective adaptation can reduce food system vulnerability. Well, people all around the world are well aware that steps need to be taken and that the system is not working now the way that it needs to. So here, just this enormous wave in the photograph to suggest the tremendous environmental and social forces that are active in the world. And my thought always is, yes, these forces are great, but if we engage with them intelligently, we can guide them and inspirit them and bring something better, something that is more helpful to life in the world. Now, this slide represents what's in my heart, what I have felt throughout my entire career. I'm in my 70s now, and so people are often relating to me as an elder. And as an elder, the thing that I want to say most, the most central thought and feeling I have is that the ways we farm and the ways we eat will determine the future of life on Earth. I see our farmers as our ambassadors to the earth. If we as individuals and our families are not growing food ourselves, then we are empowering other men and women to produce that food for us. And in a sense, they are our ambassadors. They touch the earth for us. So that basic insight, so simple, it's what the many pathways of agroecology recognize and engage. Agroecology being the term used worldwide to describe sustainable and socially just forms of drawing our life sustenance from the earth and being in relationship with it. Well, I'm making a gesture that's one way, as if it were the earth giving only to us, but we give back to the earth too as we cultivate it. And there are a great number of problems that come when we're giving back is chemicals and pesticides and herbicides and that sort of thing. So I've been involved with organic and biodynamic farming and agriculture for decades, and I see the great beauty that we can give back to the earth, the strength that we can convey as the earth conveys strength to us with the beautiful foods that are grown in those systems. Now, to come more specifically to the subject of these community farms, the CSA farms, I regard them as healthy, intelligent, and independent local cells, yet they're networked globally with other agroecological pioneers. You'll see as we go further with the slideshow that CSA really has become a global movement. Many people feel that the first CSA seeds were planted in Japan back in the 1960s and the 1970s, a farm called TK, and that essentially in the Japanese language means food with the farmer's face on it, because we actually know the people in our community who are growing the food, and they know us, the people who are eating the food that they grow. So here, the United Nations, of course, is having their big global summit to talk about food systems. And we can have similar discussions on another level in our own households and communities. So CSA is certainly not the only dimension of agroecology. It's just one part of it. There are many different forms that it's taking around the world. And here with this slide, I just wanted to remind that there are many pathways, and they offer healthy responses to the environmental and climate crisis, and I suppose also in a way to the pandemic. Their CSAs are intelligent, independent, and network cells in this global agroecological context. And they advance justice and dignity for the human beings who are farm and food workers, whether they're tilling the soil, caring for the animals, working to process the raw foods into finished meals that can be enjoyed by people. And because it's local, because almost all CSA farms are organic or biodynamic or some other form of regenerative agriculture, they provide clean, fresh, healthy food. And I think that not only increases the health of individuals and families and communities, but I think it also improves the clarity of our minds and our thinking. And in that sense, helps us with our spiritual growth and development, because if we're seeing and thinking more clearly, then we're going to be in healthier relationship with ourselves, our families, and our neighbors and professional colleagues. I mentioned down here at the very bottom of this list, almost as if it were a throwaway, that agroecological farms and gardens, like CSAs, they sequester CO2, and thus, while just a farm of a few acres or hectares may seem a very small contribution when you add them up all around the globe, as more and more healthy farms come into being, they do help to stabilize the environment and the climate and to restore balance. So I think we need to take that into account. You often think, well, here I am, I'm doing my best, I'm recycling glass bottles or doing this one small thing to help the environment. But there are, over 7 billion of us human beings now. So any one of us performing an intelligent and caring action like recycling or supporting an organic CSA farm, we're modeling appropriate behavior in a very complicated time when the challenges are very great. So never underestimate the importance not only of the small action that you've taken, but also of the way you have modeled it and what other people are seeing about who you are and the way that you're living your life. Well, here's one definition of community-supported agriculture. And I want to mention at this point that it's a form that can be adapted to its local circumstances. Not all CSAs are alike. Every culture adds its own touches to it. But in general, it's a free will association. And here I would underline the free will. It's not the kind of thing that will work if a government comes along and tries to impose it. It almost, that sort of thing just deadens it. But if you or your neighbors choose of your free will to join together as a community of households and to engage long-term, make a commitment with the farm or farms, then the community supports the farm so that it can bring forth clean, fresh food and support the community. And it restores health to the soil and to the human beings. Now, I imagine everyone's eyes just popped open when they saw this. There's so much type here. I apologize. Don't try to read this all now. If you're specifically interested in the Nylani Declaration, you can come back later and read this slide on the recording. This is the Nylani Declaration, a document that was produced in the year 2007 in the village of Nylani, which is in Mali, Africa. And people came from 80 countries, many of them farmers, indigenous peoples, rural workers, migrants, so forth, so on, women, youth, consumers. And when they came together, they talked about their situation. They talked about agroecology. And the key message of their declaration, a document well worth reading and easy to find on the internet, their key message was that the relocalization of food systems and agroecology, respect and justice are the ways forward, that's the paradigm that is best for our times and for the future, rather than the corporate technocracy, which has created so many problems. And while it's taking steps to address the problems, they're small steps. So then below that key message, there's a list of some of the organizations, but I certainly couldn't fit them all on the slide. So thank you for looking at all of that type. Here's a slide with fewer words, and it comes from Jocelyn Perrault, who is the General Secretary of an organization called Urgency. That's an acronym in French, but it's basically the international network for CSA farms. One of the concepts that was emphasized at the Nylani gathering was the concept of food sovereignty, the right of people to decide on their own food systems rather than to have corporations deciding for them. And CSA, thus, is an enactment of food sovereignty, people and farmers taking back control of the situation and proceeding on that basis. So a CSA is a partnership based on human relationships. We actually have to know one another and engage with one another, which at least here in the States, we're all kind of isolated and people don't go out much and you just don't see your friends and your colleagues. Everyone's connecting through Zoom. But the CSA is based on human relationships and mutual support. And it doesn't have to be just one producer, one farmer. Sometimes several farmers and several farms link together as a network, and one will produce certain foods and another different foods, and they make them all available to the community through a long-term agreement. The core ideas of CSA are shared risk. Now, this is something that hasn't always caught on because right now the farmer takes the risk in most farming operations, which is to say he or she has the land, purchases the seeds, plants them, and then if a great storm comes or there's some other natural disaster or a pestilence of insects and the crop is destroyed, the only one who suffers the loss is the farmer. Likewise, if it's a beautiful harvest and it's plentiful and there's a good price at the market, only one person benefits, the farmer has made more. With a CSA, the idea is that we have supported the farm up front. So before the growing season begins, we provide money. We, in a sense, invest or acquire a share of the farm's produce. And then the farmer can take that money, that capital, and use it to purchase the seeds and equipment, or to hire the help, whatever is necessary in order to go to work in the fields and produce the food. And if there's a beautiful crop with a bounty, everyone in the community farm benefits. Likewise, if a crop suffers from insects or the weather, then the loss is absorbed by the community rather than just one individual. The land ideally is held in trust because you know how frustrating to have the land purchased by a corporation and removed from the community and exploited. If the community owns the land and passes it from generation to generation, keeping the cost of the land always affordable for the people who want to take up the tools and produce, then you have much greater stability. So here's a term here, associative economics, and I believe the next slide will get into that. Let me jump ahead just a bit. Yeah, I'll go back to the slide I jumped over, but I wanted to say a word or two about associative economics in distinction from capitalism or communism or other economic systems. In capitalism, usually the driving question is, how can we increase the monetary profit for the small group of shareholders who make up the corporation? And so it's certainly not the only question active in capitalism, but it is the driving question. Whereas in at least most of the communist government forms that we have seen around the world, they tend to get involved with a lot of central planning, and the government is setting quotas and defining things and just running the operation. And it hasn't, at least in my knowledge, worked out all that beneficially for the people in the various communities. So back up here. Associative economics is a new concept associated with CSA, and there are three questions of equal weight that the members of the community and the farmers take up. The first is, what does the farm need? So it's not how can we use the farm's resources to produce profit, but what does the land need? Maybe it needs a year of being fallow or unplanted or planted in regenerative crops to enhance the life in the soil and the beauty in the soil. So what does the farm need in order to be healthy and prosperous? And then what do the active farmers need? A lot of CSAs, when they start out, they don't provide adequate funding for the farmers, and the farmers are still living a life in poverty and suffering. So this question must be considered. What do they need? They not only need finances to do their work and, of course, to take care of their own needs and the needs of their family, but they need engagement with the human beings who are eating their food. That's why I've always admired that Japanese term TK, their form of CSA, which is food with the farmer's face on it. You have knowledge of the people who are growing your food and processing your food, and they have knowledge of you, the people who are consuming it. And then that brings us to the third question. What does the community need? Well, obviously food and good, healthy food, and an opportunity to know that they're making a positive difference in the world, helping to improve the environment, stabilize the climate, and all the rest of that. So I need to back up now and once again apologize for all of the words on this, but I think it's so important that it's worth using a lot of words. A basic biodynamic or CSA idea, I heard it articulated most beautifully by Dan Kaplan of Brookfield Farm, which is in Massachusetts in the United States, on a Farmer to Farmer podcast, is that agriculture in general and CSA in particular needs to create an economy. Well, what does that mean? Right now, typically the economy creates agriculture, which is to say the global market says, well, we need rice and we need wheat. And if you will grow rice or wheat or vegetables for us, here's the market price, here's what you can get for it. And then of course that price can fluctuate over the growing season. So you tend to move away from stewardship of the earth towards a fierce competitive efficiency. I can produce my rice, a little more cheaply than you can produce rice. And so I'm always driving for efficiency, but that drains the farm and often leads to environmental problems. And of course, it puts stress on the farmers. But if you're operating under associative economics with a CSA, then you have those three questions. What does the farm need? What do the farmers need? And what does the community need? That allows human values and considerations to come into the economic process. And I think that's a lot of what Gwendolyn Hall-Smith was exploring with us in the seminar last time. And I think it's what's really missing in the world, and feel also that that's why so many civil organizations around the globe are boycotting the United Nations Food Systems Summit that's happening this year, because they feel that the human values and considerations are not being factored into the summit as they ought to be. So I know for me as one individual, I feel like, well, I can't really have much influence on this huge global summit, but I can have influence here in the community where I'm living, and I do that by directly supporting local farms and farmers. And because I know the farms and farmers, and they know me, we know what our human condition is, and we can respond to it in a healthy and respectful manner. So there's the slide on associative economics. And then on, well, here's just kind of a checklist, getting more away from the exploration of what CSA is and the global context, and a little more into how do you activate it. Well, I think very helpful to have a mission statement. Our CSA farm exists to, and then why does it exist? Why have you done this? What's your intention? What is it that you want to bring into the world? So when that's stated in a paper or in some other fashion that everyone can see and either agree or disagree with, you've got a beginning. here's what we're doing. And then people can make a free will choice. I want to be involved, or no, that's not for me. I don't want to go that way. At least in the beginning, I think it's important to start on CSA size. Sometimes people start with a very small CSA, and it might have just 5 or 10 families or households who are engaging with someone who has a large garden. And then if that large garden prospers and the person is drawn, they may expand from growing season to growing season and get larger. We have many CSAs in the United States that have, 90 or 100 households that belong and participate. And some are just huge, and they may have 500 or even 800 families that belong. And usually when they're that large, there are several farms growing the food or processing the food. And it's not just vegetables. They may also get into shares of meat, eggs, and dairy products. But very often it's helpful to start out at a smaller size and work things out. And then how do you attract the farm community? Well, obviously, to the extent that you can communicate with your neighbors during the pandemic or otherwise, getting the word out. Here's what our mission statement is. Here's what we intend, and letting people know about that. Certainly the farmer will want to chart out what crops and other foodstuffs to produce, and then plan the garden in detail. So while a CSA is not a corporate enterprise dedicated to profit, it's still a business and still need to have a flow of money coming in and going out. So it's important to consider the financial questions and have some kind of a business plan and set a budget, and don't starve the farmer. Don't, give them, of course it needs all to be negotiated, but they must have enough to work with. And then what's the distribution plan? I know here in most of the CSAs that I've participated in, there's 1 or sometimes 2 harvest days in a week when the farmer will gather from the fields all that is ripe and ready, and then place it into boxes or bags. And depending on the physical setup, you may go to the farm to pick up your box. The farm that I'm involved in now, Skarsgård Farms, they bring these boxes to a central location in the village, and we go and pick them up on Wednesdays and acquire our share. Other CSAs, at least in the United States, they have a delivery van that will go directly to people's houses and drop off the box or the bag with the weekly share. So then down here towards the bottom, prepare to store some of the crops, for depending on, not familiar with the crops of Indonesia, but here we grow a lot of squashes and turnips and so forth that can be stored for the winter, potatoes also. And those need to be stored, and then they can be distributed through the different season when crops are not growing and maturing, just as we might store some foods in our home. And then, of course, the CSA needs to maintain momentum so that it goes on from year to year. I've placed the phrase core group with a question mark there because a lot of CSAs, particularly when the movement was getting started, would have a group of volunteers who would meet weekly or monthly with the farmer to discuss what's going on and what needs to happen. And they would provide volunteer support, maybe by producing a newsletter. I know in the Skarsgård Farms CSA that I belong to, every week when you get your box of fresh vegetables, there's a one-page flyer telling us about what's going on the farm, what the conditions are, and how the farmers themselves are faring, and just generally keeping a pathway of communication open. So the core group can produce that. They can help with communications in general and just stay in touch with the farmers as they work their way through a busy season. Wanted to mention that there are a great number of computer applications for CSA management tasks. I mean, obviously you need to have a list of the people who belong and who has provided funds for their share and who has not. A lot of CSAs make provisions for low-income people who cannot afford, and it may work out that some of the people who have higher income will pay a little more so that those who have less income can also participate and have their share cost covered. Now, a very interesting idea that I think has possibilities in the future is the model pioneered by the Temple Wilton Community Farm in the state of New Hampshire in the United States. What they do is to have a meeting before the growing season begins, and the farmers, there are 3 of them, they present one budget, and the budget might be for a large sum, such as maybe $100,000. And they say, well, we need the community to provide this $100,000. And here are the reasons why. We have salaries that we're going to pay to the farmers. We have equipment that we need to purchase or repair. There are other supplies. We need to hire extra help, whatever it may be. But all of that kind of planning can be brought to the budget meeting, and then, at least this was before the pandemic, the people in the community meeting would then make bids. They would say, well, I can offer this much towards meeting the budget. And everyone would, on a separate sheet of paper, state what their contribution could be, and then it would all be added up. And if it didn't meet the $100,000 budget goal, then it would go back to a second round of what can you contribute to the farm? Or does the farm need to adjust its budget in some way, either reducing it or expanding it as circumstances may call? So the whole budget process is worked out as a community with those 3 questions. What does the farm need? What do the farmers need? And what does the community need? Now with the pandemic, I guess such a meeting could happen via Zoom or some other technology. But I wanted you to know as you go forward with the CSA that there are lots of computer apps, and there you can see the URL at the bottom right-hand side of the screen for urgency.net. Now I have to say, apparently there was a great fire in Germany a couple of weeks ago, and it took it burned up the server, the computer server that Urgency had its website on. So they have been offline for a couple of weeks. Maybe they have resolved that problem by now. I hope so. They're a tremendous resource to groups all around the world. So this is my statement that I feel so strongly and say over and over again. The CSA doesn't have to be the way they do it in Japan or the United States or France or Australia and New Zealand have a substantial network of CSA farms, but it can adapt to local resources, local culture. Here I want to mention that in the USA, many mosques, temples, and churches start CSAs. I refer to those as congregation-supported agriculture. because there may be young people in the temple or the mosque or whatever who have that impulse, and then the whole spiritual community comes together to enable them to get out on the land and to grow, and they adapt it. And in a sense, that religious congregation already has a relationship. They already know each other. They have shared beliefs and understandings and respect for one another. And to translate that, to expand it into working upon the earth to bring forth food and nutrition. So I think there's great potential in that kind of congregation-supported agriculture. And in the context of everything going on, the tremendous turbulence in our climate and economics and in culture, CSA farms can provide a cornerstone of stability, a model for a useful, healthy, and just way of responding wisely to the world, of caring for your own health, your family's health, your community's health. And even though, just a small farm or a small garden may seem to make little difference, it does make a difference. And when we add it up over and over with all of the people and all of the nations, it's very helpful indeed. So here's a seed thought that healthy social, and I guess we could put the word environmental in there, healthy and social and environmental change results not from imposing ideas or schemes from the top down, but rather from cultivating healthy impulses that are already emerging from spirit. So it's recognizing, what is the spirit in your community? Are people open to this? So instead of a government program coming in and saying your village or your city will do this and do that because we have made an official decree or a law or a regulation, well, that often brings up a lot of complications. But with the CSA, we may recognize that not only our own family, but that neighboring families share this impulse of wanting to do something healthy for our own community and for the world at large. And CSA can cultivate that and bring it forward. One of the seed thoughts of CSA that I've always admired and found better, that it's coming up from the people rather than down from the overshadowing systems and governments and corporations. So here's an ideal. I want to put this out with the recognition that we never get to the ideal. But if we don't have it, if we don't have an ideal or a dream, then our dream can never come true. So it's important to articulate ideals. And this is, for me, the ideal of a CSA farm, that they actively explore and engage new paradigms of right relationship among the people, among the human beings, and our relationship with the plants, the animals, and the whole of their natural world. So wonderful to reach towards that and to know that you're making a difference in that manner. Awakened communities. So our well-being, and when I say our, I mean 7.5 billion of us all around the planet. Our well-being requires not just intelligent individual actions, what you or I might do, but also intelligent free will actions from hundreds of thousands of different constellations of communities. So, if you think about the community that you're part of, whether it's a large city or a small village or something in between, how can the constellation of your community act more intelligently? Well, my argument is that CSA is one form, one of many ways that we can act intelligently and make an important difference. Well, here are the logos or the images of a number of CSA forms as they exist all around the world, different national networks and so forth. And you see CSAs are all out there. I love this image with the grains forming the different continents of the earth. And here's another quote from Jocelyn Perot, who's the program coordinator for the International CSA Hub. He mentions that CSA has become a mature social movement that has a recognized place in the United Nations, and it really is networked. It's a community of practice. This slide might be hard to read, I know. So that urgency is both a community of practice because they're CSA farm members as well. And it's a network of partners affiliated with CSA. So they're not a governing agency, they're just a hub where you can go to share information. What have you learned about CSA in Indonesia that might be beneficial to people in Japan or New Zealand or Africa or even Germany or France? Likewise, what can you learn from the CSAs in these other nations that might be beneficial and helpful to what's going on in Indonesia and what's developing there? This is a slide to give us a moment to reflect. So I encourage you, wherever you are seated or standing now, to sit back for a moment and take a couple of full breaths and just relax. So these are contemplative questions that you can take with you in your own time to reflect upon. But what resources are at hand should you be motivated and out of your own free will want to be involved with the CSA? So what resources are already at hand? The land, the tools, the skilled people who can do this? And who, in addition to you, feels that this would be a worthwhile idea and would be willing to commit and participate? It's not easy. It does require an addition to your life to take on another responsibility, the responsibility of being a community member. But I feel that the rewards of knowing that you're making an important difference for your family, your community, and the earth are well worth making the commitment and doing the work to participate. So then a final reflection question, what else would be necessary to bring a CSA into life and to sustain it and maintain it going forward? So I leave you with those questions. And here I want to thank you for taking the time to come and participate in this seminar and to engage the questions of CSA farms to explore and activate. And of course, I put the web address, the URL for one of my websites there. And I have written extensively on CSA farms over the years. I got first involved, I guess it was starting back in 1986, and then had the opportunity to write a book in 1989 and 1990. And I just stayed interested and involved ever since, along with the other work that I do. So that's the end of my slideshow. I'm going to close this up, and now we can proceed to discussion of CSA.
Thank you, Stephen, for the presentation. Now I invite the participant who already have question to speak up, or I can also read your question. I read two questions here from Yusak and Jeffrey. Yusak, do you want to open your mic and state your question, please? Okay.
Good night, Mr. Stephen.
No.
I'm very interested with CSA, but I don't know how to start the CSA. I live in Jakarta and at apartment and so many people I want to meet a CSA that connecting with the farmer with at maybe Bogor or something. Because your presentation full of philosophy, but we want to practice the CSA. How we start it? Can you give advice?
Yeah. Thank you,
Yes,
Yusak.
I'm happy to respond. I did hear, I might mention that now that I'm in my 70s, my ears are not as good as they once were, but I certainly did understand what you shared. And I would almost go back to that last slide on pause, breathe, and reflect. Who else do you know? Is there even one other person you know in Jakarta who might share this interest, and then you can begin to communicate with each other? And even just as a simple exercise, writing out on paper, what is your vision? I know the CSA forum does work in large metropolitan areas. New York City has many. Now, the farms are not in the city, although there are a lot of gardens in New York. What is there, like 8 million people living there? I mean, it's a huge metropolis. But the farms are out in the countryside, and they bring the shares into the city weekly to distribute them. And they almost all began, I think, with some kind of a mission statement. So that's, I think, a good place, even if you don't know anyone else in Jakarta immediately who would like to join. If you started with a mission statement, which can be changed and adapted over time as you learn more, then you can share that statement. You know, here's my dream, here's my vision, that we would have this kind of arrangement, and you know, share it with everyone that you know. And some will laugh at you, of course. It's always the way, and say, well, that's not very practical. And you can argue back that it is the heart of practicality. It's the heart of wisdom. It's the heart of good citizenship, not only for being someone, a citizen of Indonesia, but a citizen of the world to do this. And I think if you share it, you may find other people who are interested, and then who of those who are interested is willing to make a commitment of time and energy to go forward. So that's starting from, you know, the very smallest one person, and then expanding to two or larger. But it can grow like that. And certainly I know the concept has grown in New York just from that sort of thing. And that there are now, you know, dozens of CSAs that serve the city in that way. And the food has the farmer's face on it. The people know who grew it, and then the farmer sees them when they come to pick up their share, and they either offer compliments, oh, this is beautiful, the food that you grew, or they complain, oh, look, I don't like this apple the way that it looks. But you have this human relationship going on, and that's so healthy and so important. So I hope my response is helpful to you.
Okay. Thank you, Stephen. Yeah, for Yusak, maybe in the WhatsApp group, you can identify who are in Bogor, produce some food to supply to Jakarta, because I know some of the participant is from Bogor and around Jakarta. Yeah, maybe from that we can start networking. Okay, we have more question here coming out. Jeffrey, Jeffrey, do you want to open your mic,
Hello.
please? Yes, please.
Yeah, hello. Yes, can you guys hear me?
Yes. Yes, please.
Okay. Hi, Steven. So it's nice. Yeah, so it's nice meeting you. So I'm Jeffrey. So actually coming from Bogor. So actually, I already tried to implement. I have a farm at Bogor. So already implementing the CSA business model to my farm. So actually, we just started in January 2021. So very new. So we only have at the moment like monthly members, like around 20-ish CSA members. So we mostly send into Jakarta and around Bogor. But the thing is that the vision that we want to adopt with the CSA model is that at the moment, the most of our customers simply subscribing to the CSA model simply because of the convenience. So it's more easy because they simply get a weekly box of vegetables delivered to their home. Well, the CSA model that we are implementing is not like a fully CSA model like you just described. So my question is that with the context of Indonesian market where we are very new, the CSA is not many people know, how you build a sense of like the between the members and the farmer so that both are having the sense of sharing risk. So mean if there's a surplus, of course the member will get more. If there's a catastrophe of the yield, for example, so that the member will understand and such. So I think that's my question. If you have any learning from other country or other markets. So thanks you.
Yeah, I think there's going to be a seminar very soon, or maybe I can find it if it already happened, on retaining the members of the CSA so that they remain committed and involved over years. So I will research that and send Annie the link to that so you can either participate or review the recording of it. Any number of ways. I know if among the small group of households that belong to your CSA now, if there are a couple of individuals, a couple of people who want to meet with you over the telephone or on the internet to discuss this question, and while we can speak in general terms, you have a specific situation, which is to say there are certain real people with real needs and concerns and distractions in their lives. And how can that particular group bond more fully? One tool that has been used widely, of course, is the newsletter, so that people not only get their vegetables, but they know what's going on the land and in the lives of the people who are growing the food. That helps to build a relationship when they know more of what's going on. And then, if it's possible for you during the delivery process to see and engage with the people, that also is very helpful. But I do want to find the link to that seminar, retaining the commitment and involvement of the community members. What are the best ways to do that? Ultimately, I would say, if they are rewarded with beautiful, healthy foods, they will remember that, it makes an impression over time. I know I've come to depend on the CSAs that I have belonged to, as I've moved around quite a bit in the United States, and that's what, for me, anchors the relationship.
Thank you.
So, that's simple. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Now we go to the third question from Cosmo. Please.
Yeah, thank you, Annie, and thank you, Stephen, for such a wonderful talk. My question is, if you can mention or any example of this kind of organization where was managed the whole landscape. So it's not only a group of spots. I'm imagining several spots like in a map where the farms are, but where they were forced to manage as well the forest or to restore some kind of a water system because it's needed, or lake. So do you know any example where the landscape was involved, or our watershed level probably, where it was meaningful as well because you were managing and restoring the whole system?
I cannot give you an example, but what you're describing is obviously, the pinnacle of wisdom, that it would not just be the field where the foods are grown, but the whole surrounding environment. So I will give that some thought and see if I can provide an example for you. I can't do it just now, but you've inspired me with your description of what is necessary and wise. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. Now to the fourth question, Pak Sunarto, would you please state your question, please?
Thank you, Nylani. Hi, Stephen.
Hello.
Nice to see you again.
You
I think
again.
I attended your previous session also. It's always interesting. And thank you so much again for sharing. Sorry, did I show my video? Oh, I thought I did, but I meant to show my face also.
There you are.
Yeah, hi. I'm from Bogor actually, also like Jeffrey. So my question actually follows quite nicely from Guatemala question that was like at the landscape scale. So my concern or question is more like, yeah, how do we make this idea, this beautiful concept, to be applied at a bigger scale? Because at the moment we are kind of like competing with, as you mentioned, all of the power that will or are working against it, right? Basically, they're the one that already get benefit from the current system that operates now. And when we promote these kind of things, oftentimes this is based on what I observe, and yeah, across places, basically that corporation and even government wouldn't be very supportive of this kind of idea, especially when it comes to like larger scale, because it will take away or undermine their roles in, like, providing, for example, like fertilizer or any other supplies, and also even the demand and things. So the trade will likely going to be cut also. So the role of corporation also likely going to be undermined if this system work globally. And also I don't know, like how do we supply the global population that is already like 7.5 billion now with this system? Is it something that is possible, or the number of people has to be reduced first because we kind of like overshoot the carrying capacity of the planet? Sorry, my question is a bit theoretical probably, but that has been my concern. And if you can address it, like again at the even slightly smaller level, like landscape level, like what was asked before, that would be even helpful, I think. I hope that's clear enough. Thank you.
CSA is not the answer to all of the agricultural questions. It's one particular pathway within the broader umbrella of agroecology. And it's not suited for everyone. Some people don't want to be involved in a system like that. But for those who do, it's a good option. And I want to acknowledge, as you said, there's 7.5 billion of us. And I don't think CSA farms could feed the world. We do need the larger scale operations. But my feeling is, they really need to change, and not just lip service or little changes, but in terms of polluting the land and the water. And I think abusing the animals a lot by raising them in these confined animal feeding operations where there are thousands of chickens or thousands of cattle or thousands of hogs gathered together at enormous waste lagoons and all the problems that go with that. So CSA is a partial answer, and it can provide for individual communities, but we need to transform the overall system, and we're probably always going to need larger farms that are operating. So it's going to have to be a partnership. And what really needs to happen is just this awakening in everyone around the globe to the realities of the environmental degradation, the climate change, and of course we have the pandemic in these years. Hopefully it won't go on too much longer. But the environmental cleanup and the climate change, those are there for us. We must reckon with them. And corporations cannot just be making small adjustments. Oh, we're using a little less chemical fertilizer. We're using a little less herbicide or pesticide. No, there needs to be whole scale change. That's got to come from the people. And we need to continue to present our impassioned point of view that halfway measures are not good enough now. We need to go all the way to resolving these problems and make the commitment. And on the scale of one individual or one family, well, what I can do, I can join with a community of my neighbors in one of these CSA farms. Of course, it doesn't supply my full diet. I still go to the grocery store and purchase other things, but a lot of what my main diet is can come from the CSA. And they're different, you know. Some CSAs just provide a small portion of a family's diet, and others have developed the capacity, usually through a network with other farms, of meeting more needs. So I hope my answer is helpful. That's how
yes, definitely. Thank you so much. That's give me like a new insight and more hopeful also, actually, not like, you know, aiming too high or something, but still this can go along together, and we need to transform the bigger scale of the farming and the business overall. I think that's a beautiful one. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you very much. Are there any more questions? We are almost approaching the closing time. Yeah, as Stephen mentioned, CSA is one of the options that we can choose, especially if we live in close to community who still have farmland, or if we also have the access to that farmland, then we can start something beautiful from ourselves. It might not change like the overall system quickly at this moment, but at least we can create thousands and maybe millions of examples that sustainability is possible, and it can be start small, and we don't need to wait for big money to come and support for our sustainability, and we can start from ourselves and our community, and that's why we can live sustainability in this depressing world. Yeah, so that's my hope, the intention. Oh yeah, Jeffrey share a link that we can see how he has set up the CSA. As Jeffrey mentioned, Jeffrey live in Bogor. Maybe Jeffrey and Yusa from Jakarta can start to talk and set up CSA in Jakarta and surround Jakarta. Yeah. Okay. Now we almost close. Before that, I would like to make announcement. So you will get the materials already in your emails. You can explore the reading materials, the video, and the writing that we prepare. Hope it will be useful. Now we will proceed the recording. Once it is ready, we can share it with you. And then Siska will share the evaluation form through the WhatsApp group. Please reply, because your evaluation will help us to improve the quality of our session next time. For Stephen, thank you very much for staying with us in this Earth Day, and thank you for bringing us new inspiration and how we can live more sustainably, starting from our food, our farm, and we can contribute something to the more sustainable world. And thank you, Quatemok, for attending this session. Maybe next time you can share again your experience in Mexico. Okay, now we can open our mic and say thank you in our language to Stephen and to all participants. Terima kasih. That's what we say in Indonesia for thank you. Yeah.
Terima kasih, Stephen.
Yeah, and
Terima kasih.
Terima kasih.
Terima kasih.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, everyone.
Yeah, and now open your video so Siska can make a photo, group photo.
Ya, 1, 2, 3 halaman pertama. Terus halaman yang kedua.
Page 2.
1, 2, 3. Ya, udah.
Oke. Selesai?
Sudah.
Okay. Thank you very much. Now we can say goodbye and see you next month for the other topic. Thank you all.
See you guys.
Thank you,
Good night.
Stephen. Thank you, Kotemok. Thank you all for attending this session. Hope it will be useful. Yeah.
Ciao. Bye.
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 Bye.